Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
A drop in migration after Brexit could leave businesses struggling with labour shortages. So, can robots pick up the slack?
Well, in the latest in our series of Brexit forensics, here's our economics editor, Ed Conway.
Is this a vision of the future? A world where tractors drive themselves, where the robots have taken all the jobs? Certainly, it's not a vision of the present. You can't buy a robot that can pick apples, or, at this time of year, prune the trees. At least you can't yet. So humans are still all important for the economy. In fact, the problem now is we haven't got quite enough of them.
It's been much harder this year for our farm, but for lots and lots of other farms too. There has just been a shortage of workers willing to come and do the types of seasonal harvest roles that we need. Brexit has fast-forwarded a problem that we knew was coming anyway. The sector is restricted to only using people from within the UK and the EU. And the problem is that people from first world economies don't really want to do seasonal work.
In other words, with record high employment, if Brexit means a sudden stop in flows of migration, might it force us to face up to a deeper economic issue?
Now, we all know Britain has a productivity problem, too little income generated for every hour worked. And at least part of the explanation for that is the fact that we've had unlimited access to Europe's labour market over the past decade or so. They've come to factories, to shops, to farms like this one. Why invest in the machinery and automation if a human can do it for you cheaper?
And that's mostly what we've done for the past decade and a half. Most of the workers here at Rayner's, a sandwich maker in Essex, come from Eastern Europe. Say they disappeared overnight. Could they be replaced with machines? Well, you've got automated slicers and packaging machines, but as with apple farming, the technology's not quite there yet. They've yet to invent a robot which can pick out the right piece of lettuce for the right sandwich.
It really is a case of mutate or die. We are going to have to change. The industry, the food industry, the sandwich industry is going to have to take hold of those innovations and exploit them, because the very labour-intensive methods that we have had are going to come under increasing pressure and effectively not be possible in the future.
For a glimpse of the future, consider this poultry farm. The chickens are constantly monitored by CCTV cameras. There's underfloor heating. In fact, since embracing technology, David Speller now operates a consultancy, modernising and monitoring other chicken farms around the world.
I think the investment required up front for bringing innovation and technology is always going to be an issue. It's very, very difficult to sit there and justify spending this money when you can't guarantee the results. But I think what's interesting with Brexit is our hands being forced.
Even when the new technology arrives, we'll still need humans to do the high-skilled jobs, the monitoring and analysing, even if they're not driving the tractors anymore. Which brings us back to the future. This is the Hands-Free Hectare, a project of Harper Adams University in Shropshire. They've planted, managed and harvested this field for a full year without a single human doing any of the grunt work.
Machines like you see behind me working in swarms, so 4 or 5 of these machines replacing one larger machine. So we still need the person, but rather than driving a tractor, they'll be managing a fleet of tractors that will be kinder to our soils and more precise. It's an area that, because we're being forced to innovate, we can become world leaders in. So the UK can really set ourselves up as a world leader in agricultural automation and robotics.
If leaving the single labour market pushes the UK towards that future faster, Brexit could help boost productivity. The big challenge now, building the robots quick enough to be ready for when Britain leaves. Ed Conway, Sky News.
So while we're about to hand over our jobs to the robot overlords, here to discuss is Emeritus Professor of Robotics and AI at Sheffield University, Noel Sharkey. Good to talk to you. Which jobs do you think are most at risk of being replaced by robots in years to come?
Well, most of the jobs you've just been speaking about in agriculture, but also in in many other service industry jobs, but it's not going to be quick. It's not going to be it's going to be maybe 10 years before we get this together. I mean, people have been working on all these tasks for quite a long time now, and it's beginning to come together, but it's still quite a lot of work, and UK is a long way behind.
So we hear a lot from Silicon Valley about driverless lorries in America and things like that. I mean, how long do you think they could be on our roads in the UK? Is that about the 10-year mark?
Yes, I would imagine so. People are talking about doing it much sooner, but in my experience, it's going to still take a lot of work to coordinate them with normal traffic. But, you know, in the UK at the moment, I hear this week that there's something like 45,000 truck jobs open. So if we had driverless trucks, that would be a good thing. There's been some testing on British highways with one truck and a bunch of other lorries behind it, and the one in front remote controlling all the others. So that's beginning to happen, but it's not going to happen. We can't rely on it to happen like next year, the year after.
So the benefits of automation are obvious. You know, it's cheaper. It doesn't involve human beings. They're not going to phone in sick. You don't need to pay them, etc., etc. But what about the negatives? I understand that there are some gender and ethnicity issues with robots.
Yeah, well, with AI. General, yes, there are. But don't get carried away with the costing less, because they cost a lot, and there's all the maintenance as well. So they're not that cheap to install. But in terms of gender issues, yes, with machine learning techniques, we're finding that, for instance, selection of job applicants in work, we're finding those kinds of things, lots of different tasks. They're biased against ethnic groups and against women as well, because of the way the machine learning mechanisms work, and the using big data that ossifies our societal values. So it's not very progressive. And
so
that's a big concern. Well.
Sorry to interrupt you, because we only have 30 seconds left, but is that because they've been programmed badly? Can that not be rectified?
No, it's not because of the programming. It's because they use large volumes of data, billions of lines of data, and there's no way of accessing that data any other way. And the machine learning techniques have no transparent, big statistical machines.
Okay.
So people are working very hard on solutions, but not finding them.
Noel Sharkey, good to talk to you. Thanks very much for giving us your expertise. Well, let's get more on this with Dr. Carl Fry, the co-director of the Oxford Martin programme on technology and employment. Mutate or die, we heard in that report. Should we be scared about advances in artificial intelligence, do you think?
Well, it very much depends on who you are. Computers are far from being able to displace human workers in all domains. Some tasks that are associated with creativity, complex social interactions, and also some type of low-skill service work that involve the perception and manipulation of regular objects are still very difficult to automate. So it very much depends on which field of work you are.
So which industries do you think are most at threat? Those are the ones that aren't.
Well, production and clerical work continues to be the fields that are by far most exposed. But we also see automation increasingly moving into high-skill domains, such as financial services, and also increasingly healthcare. But more importantly, I think we're seeing a new generation of service robots that are potentially being more adaptable, also in low-skill service work. And I think that's potentially where most productivity growth is going to come from, and that is mainly from autonomous vehicles.
Of course, the upside is that other jobs potentially are then created around that, human jobs.
Sure. So, I mean, one dilemma is that, you know, we can't see the unseen, right? And when automation happens, you can know the type of job that is being displaced, it is seen, but a new task and a new job that may emerge from that is unseen. And as a result of that, there's always been a lot of anxiety surrounding automation, and this time is certainly no different in that regard.
How much of what they do is, in terms of this anxiety, is about the humans that are creating them or programming them? I mean, I suppose a lot of people think it's not so much the fear of the robots taking over, it's the fear of somebody with nefarious ideas using them for the wrong reasons.
Well, I think that has always been the case. I mean, if you go back to ancient times, people worried about the introduction of iron as a metal, because people using iron weapons had a potential of taking over other civilizations. So we're always worried about the introduction of new technology and its potential use for bad as well. I think the good news is that the downside can, at least to some extent, be managed, and that's what we need to do as well, to take advantage of the huge opportunities that these new technologies do offer.
And in terms of those opportunities, the opportunities for employment and for jobs around robots and artificial intelligence, where is the UK on an international scale of knowledge and of training?
Well, the UK is actually at the forefront of machine learning. So a lot of machine learning research is being done by the UK. A lot of machine learning startups are actually based in the United Kingdom. Where the United Kingdom lags is when it comes to adoption. So the United Kingdom has one of the lowest penetration rates in the Western world when it comes to the take-up of industrial robots, for example. So the UK is part leading the field when it comes to expanding in the frontiers of automation. It's lagging far behind when it comes to adopting the new technology. And
very briefly, why is that?
It's hard to say. I think the abundance of cheap labor could be one reason. And I think it's important to also, when you look at this, there's a sort of double-edged sword, because the abundance of labor also means that productivity often tends to stay slow for longer periods of time. And if you go back to sort of where it all started with the Industrial Revolution, the main reason that the Industrial Revolution actually happened in Britain was because of this high-wage economy. Britain realized that it needed to automate because it didn't have the abundance of cheap labor that other countries had.
OK. Dr. Carl Fry, good to talk to you. Thanks very much.
My pleasure.